Her story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil right.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Riff Worship Podcast. Join with me, as always, the pride and joy of Illinois, Austin Paulson. How you doing, bud?
Man, you don't even know it. You just said the lyric from the Chicago Bears touchdown song, just like
it's
that.
It's ingrained. It's part of it.
We have a special guest today, don't we?
We do. We sure do. Might as well be like our Who's Line act, right? You know, there's always somebody kind of swapping in and out.
David from Atræ Bilis, welcome back yet again. Thank you for letting us
g'day.
Bother the hell out of you.
Thanks for the invite. Happy to talk about death metal and just be a complete nerd with the two of you once again. And get an excuse to listen to some more stuff that I haven't listened to in a while. So honestly, if I wasn't talking about these records, I'd probably be on my couch listening to these records. So
perfect. I knew Swindle wasn't going to want to talk about it, so
no, that was a dead giveaway.
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, I got another week off." I'm like, "All right, see you when I see you." But yeah, I figure we have two very prime experts of this genre. I've dabbled a good portion of my life, but I know you guys are, You'll surprise me with some picks here, I think. So we're going to be talking about our top 5 death metal albums, bands of all time, along with some honorable mentions, because this is always hard. I'm sure any of these picks could change at any given moment. We'll also talk about some of the newer bands we like. But yeah, death metal. What is death metal, huh? What is this weird, depraved genre we love so much?
Oh, God. All right. Hot take already. 30 seconds into the pod. Death metal. To me, death metal, it was metal that was pushing the boundaries. I'm not sure that that's happening as much anymore, as there's been a bit of a resurgence to, what was kind of coming out of thrash metal by 10 or so years. And, you might hear that term old school death metal, which is very popular. But when I first kind of got exposed to death metal and understanding the language of it, which, I feel similar to jazz and classical music takes just years of exposure to really get it. At that time, bands were really pushing, the speed department and, the riff department, and the vocals were getting lower and more guttural, and it really felt like death metal was an area of heavy music where it was all about extremity. And of course, that was shown in the artwork and, the lyrical content, and it really was, take no prisoners. Now, there's a bit of that it kind of feels like the entry point to death metals is a little bit different to how it had been in previous decades. And it's great to see, but it typically feels like, the heavy kind of more, digestible chunks of death metal. So, before we had terms like breakdown and slams, it was just like the big mosh parts. There are bands that are just doing those and calling it death metal. And I guess in some ways it is, but to me, real death metal, it's about blast beats, it's about extremity, and it's about sounding evil, and just having a vibe. So of course that's subjective, but that's kind of what I look for when I'm listening to death metal records.
For me, death metal, and I was having a conversation with my lovely girlfriend about this recently. She goes, "What drew you to it?" I said, "Well, as David mentioned, the extremity of it, right? How much further can something go? And that's what I loved about it. Pushing the envelope, getting as extreme as possible, seeing the subject matter, seeing the album covers, music videos at this time. How gross can we get? And just understanding too that I've realized throughout the years of listening to this that death metal can be one of the more open subgenres of all. I mean, it kind of covers every gambit, right? You've got brutal death metal, technical death metal, so on and so forth, right? And you've even got this, as David mentioned, this resurgence of like old school death metal. Vocals are a little bit more cavernous sounding. Everything's got a little bit more air to it. Everything kind of is influenced again by the early Swedish bands, the early Florida bands, some of the early New York bands at this point. I'd like to see some more influence from the California bands, but that's a topic for another day. But death metal to me just seemed to be the avenue I wanted to go. When I started playing music, I wanted to be the best I could possibly be. And all of the musicians that I saw pushing the envelope were in this genre. Albeit my first exposure to death metal, main exposure was through Cannibal Corpse, which is a great entry point for anybody to get into them. I've mentioned this to Austin and Swindle in different episodes. You can't just put the water back in the cup. Once it's been poured out, like you just got to go heavier, like you got to go forward. But just overall death metal just seemed like freedom to me. It matched the anger that was in my head. So it just fucking went all for it. And as someone that is not an extreme lyrics person, great fucking genre. Like, great genre. Yeah, you've got some just obscene shit that's going on, which we will talk about. But you've also got stuff that's like, John Tardy like has a song on Slowly We Rot that he doesn't say anything on. Like full on. So it's like perfect. It's like there's a little bit of humor to it as well that I really embrace and enjoy about it, because you can't have some of these bands without that. I mean, who names their band Seriously Dying Fetus? Come on. It's fucking great. But yeah, I love this subgenre. It's my favorite. I think out of my record collection, that's primarily where it sits. And there's so many bands that I don't own anything from that exist that I love, that I do want to hopefully obtain something at some point. But now to Austin, our curator, our captain.
Well, you're both wrong. I disagree with you wholeheartedly. No, I'm kidding. No, I like the touch point of like evil and extreme, because I got into death metal through thrash. I was a big thrash guy. Like I'd kind of taken the very like chronological path. Like I was into like more traditional heavy metal growing up, and then I got into thrash, and then the more natural progression would be to find death metal. But that was like at least with thrash, it never felt, I wasn't like ever really scared that I was listening to it. It felt like kind of like, oh yeah, this is kind of rooted in punk and like hardcore and some of the things I already like. But this was like when it clicked in my brain, I was like, oh, should I be listening to this? I like would hide album covers from my parents, or like, I don't know if I really ever told people I was like, oh, this is what I like. I like Cannibal Corpse, or like I like Morbid Angel, or there was like a like almost like this wrongdoing in kind of purchasing these records and listening to these, which kind of it entices you to like dive further in. So once I kind of found the bands that I liked, I just went full steam ahead. I digested all the interviews that I could find, like one that comes to mind is like David Vincent in like some random record store in like Tampa, Florida, or like some of those like old like documentaries shot on like a handheld camera. But yeah, I don't know. It just seems like there are a lot of with any like subgenre, there's going to be like certain tropes, and like the thing that like kind of I was like a teenager, and I'm like, man, like this is brutal, and there's skulls, and these guys like horror movies and like sci-fi, and then you've kind of had your way with that, and it kind of opens you up to this whole different world, and like it really can be whatever you make it. And that's with music in general. But like with death metal, it feels like most of the stuff I listen to now kind of has at least some sort of touchstone or like influence of a death metal. It could be like doom, and you add it to like all sorts of different things. I'm kind of getting in the weeds here, but like for the most part, like I always come back to this subgenre, and like the records that we're talking about today are like some of my favorite. It doesn't matter if it were death metal, like this is just stuff I tend to come back to and enjoy. But yeah, I think we have a bunch of records here that we have to get through today.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah.
Before we get to the records, David's a little bit older than I am, but I'm a few years older than you, Austin. I grew up in an area with no internet connection, anything like that. It was dial up, and I had to pick up magazines, look at, we've all looked at, the inserts of an album. Someone's got a t-shirt on, you go that route. But books were another big portion of how I discovered this music, and two in particular, Ian Christie's Sound of the Beast, which had like these great lists all throughout of like different bands to get into, had like the classic death metal bands. And then of course, Albert Madrain's Choosing Death, which is, I still have my original copy. It's all worn. It's got coffee stains on it. Like, yeah, that's the one. I still have my original copy of that as well.
I had this in the school library, and then I was like, I just never gave it back. So,
oh, that's amazing. But those two books helped kind of like kick the door open for me.
Yeah, David, how were you like finding stuff?
So I did have an internet connection. It wasn't the greatest internet connection. I'd set something up to download, and I'd, just try and convince my mom not to call any of her sisters because that would mean that we'd have to kind of unplug the modem and use the phone line. And it was, it was a real effort. I did have some friends that had cable internet, which was a big thing because, instead of downloading a single song that'd take 3 minutes, you'd kind of go over there and maybe download one song in 30 seconds, but most likely an assortment of viruses that would just implode the family computer. But the internet was really how I kind of, I met my community, because when I was a teenager, I was the one guy that was basically like the bin of the music that was too heavy that other people didn't get. And instead of just like throwing it in the garbage, it was like, oh, well, David might like it. It's just too much for me. So for me, that was great. I had friends that, also, we had shared interests. We'd listen to Slayer and Pantera and, all those bands. But, when it got to, the Deicides and the Cannibal Corpses and things like that, it was often too much for them. As most people kind of get that itch with death metal and just kind of wanting to hear how far down the rabbit hole these sounds and soundscapes get. I was just so curious to it. So it was a combination of, back in the day, we used MSN Messenger and another chat program called ICQ, and it was actually spelled ICNQ. But you could also send songs, because MP3s back at that time were very small. The compression rates were awful, but I'd be able to connect with, other guys from other schools that were around my age that were going to local shows, and, we'd talk about music together and just share single MP3s. And so I got introduced to our local Melbourne metal scene pretty young. And it was through local shows, talking with other friends online that went to those local shows, sharing whatever songs we could. And then, the equivalent of a mixtape was a burned CD. So if anybody had a copy of a CD, we would burn it for each other, and we would do it that way. I mean, I didn't have any money to buy any CDs until I was a little bit older, but it didn't stop me from essentially just scouring the internet to find more of these bands. One of the first CDRs that I was given because it was too much from another friend. His name was Nick, and it was Deicide's When Satan Lives. I think it was live in Chicago, actually.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I heard that before any of their studio albums, and I thought looking back on it now, it was perfect because it had that really scary, bigger than life, evil kind of atmosphere about it. And then because it was live and because it was such a great mix and such a great recording, it actually kind of helped me connect with it a lot more because it was more imposing. It was more like, oh, there's no studio trickery here. It's, it's two brothers and a drummer and this other scary guy just making this crazy music, and this is what they sound like live. So yeah, it was a very, very, very formative period for me. And of course that at that time I kind of became known around school as like the metal guy or one of the metal guys. And so, it wasn't long after that I was in shows with other people that were much older than I was outside of school, and the rest is kind of history. But yeah, community and the online stuff was how I got into it.
Yeah. I had like certainly the books we've kind of mentioned, the same ones that Dill kind of referenced, and yeah, luckily, definitely came into this form of music at a time where internet was easily accessible for me. So like, but which was great because while I didn't have like an older person at the time to like kind of show me different things, I could just kind of like, accidentally bump into something and like hope that it was halfway decent, or, luckily I feel like I kind of made my way and then eventually got my community later on. But yeah, I don't know. There's just something to be said about like, yeah, how much shit that people have preserved on YouTube, or like, certainly LimeWire was big in our household. Yep. Certainly got a letter in the mail at one point. Sorry, Mom. But yeah, I don't know. It's just I'm glad we're here. It all led to this, right?
Just before we head on, I didn't get into it through books, but I've amassed a few books on death metal, almost kind of reference books, if anything else. There is one called Extremity Retained, which was written by Jason originally from Dying Fetus, and then he moved on to Misery Index. And I can't see it from here, but my good pal Jonas actually got me one on Finnish death metal, which was released not too long ago as well. I forget the name of that one, but that was really good. It kind of covers, Zisma and Demilich and their local scene over there.
Did you guys notice anything about like the bands in particular that you picked? Was there like a through line? I'm sure they're all different, but was there like a theme that you noticed?
Well, I mean, look, I don't mean to sound like an incorrigible curmudgeon, but there's things I just don't like about death metal. Like if any of these things apply, I just kind of automatically check out.
Yeah.
So, I've kind of said this before. I don't like bands that ape other bands. So, and there are bands that do it great. Like an example of this would be Viscera Infest quoting the Mexican Disgorge. Love Mexican Disgorge. One of my favorite death metal, gore grind, whatever you want to call them bands. Having Viscera Infest on the scene, great. It's like having another Discord record. But I can't look past it. Just be your own band. So I have big things with that. If I hear riffs that have blatantly been taken from influences, I can't. That unfortunately seems to be happening quite a bit. I can't do bands that have got cartoon merch. So if I've established like a deep respect for a band and I've looked up to them as like, people that pave the way and have just kind of bent the genre on its head and taken these crazy risks throughout their career and roughed it when nobody knew who they were. And then they finally kind of get to these audiences and they start doing manga merch or something like that. It just instantly just demises their credibility. I cannot do it. Cannot do humor, overt humor, and selling cartoony ideas in death metal. That's a line for me. That's why we have power metal. That's why we have other styles of music. But to me, death metal should be it should be serious, or it should be like the humor of it should be like truly sick and disturbing.
There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I won't throw any producers under the bus, but there's a few producers and there's a few trends that bands are kind of going through at the moment that I can't do. And I would also say I really just don't like death metal that sounds like it's been written on Guitar Pro and then distributed to different people and then learned. And I think the longer you've been listening to this style, the more obvious it is. So, and there are entire record labels that have got entire rosters, multiple labels. You know, when we start thinking about labels like the New Era of Unique Leader and the Artisan Era and stuff like me, it all just sounds like Guitar Pro. Just bands come in and play, and it takes away the spirit of a unified band, which I think is important in death metal. So none of these records that I have selected have got any of that I'm aware of.
Well, I'll kind of explain further when we get into the records, but like, I like that all of my bands kind of have like different eras that can be enjoyed. Like I one band in particular, I feel like you could tell me like an album and be like, oh, I know exactly what that sounds like. Or like, you know, they shifted later into this territory. And so I like that there's kind of multitudes to like a band's discography. It's not just like, I like consistency, certainly in some aspects, but like, I do like when a band kind of is taking risks or maybe evolving in some, you can see the evolution of a band throughout their career. So I think there's a lot of that on here. I don't know if my picks are basic. I feel like in comparison to your guys, I feel like I have like some, like, yeah, those are classic records. Not that that's what I was going for, but I mean, they all have some bangers, a lot of groove in here too. I like some grooves. I'm a big groovy guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need groove in death metal.
Yeah.
I really do.
There's a fine line. There's a very fine line for that, though, because I think some bands, and this is like my thing, is some bands utilize the phrase groove for lack of idea, for lack of like creativity. And we have certain bands that try to pull the groove move all day long. And it's just like, just sounds mid-tempo. It sounds really just do better, be better. But yes, groove, I think to the degree that David is talking about is something that I enjoy out of a lot of my picks on here as well. The through line for mine are these the bands that I chose today, all aside from one in particular, could rotate with a ton of other bands that I love. But the idea is that which bands help me branch out further, right? What bands help me dig deeper, help me find different things. And the bands that I chose for my 5 are for sure a ton of those. I've also realized that I really prefer vocalists you can't fucking understand. I love it. I absolutely love it. Like, yeah, I love some legible stuff. I love, obviously one of my picks is a very melodic record. But it's like, even then, you still got to read along with the lyric sheet because you don't know what the fuck he's saying half the time. And, you know, I look at any of the 4 of my records, I even put like an alternate to them of like, God, I could be in a different mood one day and it's this, you know.
True.
I read a great interview with Carl Sanders many years ago. He's like, death metal's so different now. And he was probably referring to the early 2000s. He's like, you could wake up one morning, listen to Scream Bloody Gore, and then go on a workout and listen to Dying Fetus. It's like, you've got all of these different flavors out there. He's like, or you can have a history lesson and listen to my band. It's like, there's so much out there. There's so many different elements to it. And I'm glad that all of our choices are somewhat different when it comes to the different flavors of death metal that you could get. And it just shows that there are so many things you can do within this somewhat limited subgenre. I think the only limitation this subgenre has is the 3 of us sitting here or what the fans maybe impose upon it and what they want from it, because you can do so much with this subgenre. I mean, God, Ulcerate is a kind of a newer band that I think of, it's like, that's like post-death. That's like some shit that, I mean, you look at a band like that, or you look at like more of the slam adjacent bands. Like I became a fan of Party Cannon recently. Like that's some silly shit, but like, God, is it fun just to put on and like, all right, what are we doing next? How many like Action Park references are we going to make on this record? Like Jesus. But anyway, who wants to start? Why don't we let our guest start for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, okay. So I don't know if it's appropriate. I mean, I could talk about this stuff for years. So I kind of feel like I need to just kind of mention some honorable mentions. And I'm also, when I'm thinking about my list, they're in no particular order, but these are records that I would say have had a lasting impact on me to the point that if I was on a desert island and I could only take 5 death metal records, strictly death metal, these would most likely be in there. I'll also say that there's a couple of bands in here where, depending on the week, it would be another album from the same band, because there are some very important bands in here. So I guess should I start with some honorable mentions that on any other day of the week absolutely could have made this list, and I feel that they should be.
Yeah, I think we could. Yeah, you want to start with honorable mentions really quick and just kind of
breeze through them.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, very quickly. Suffocation, Pierce from Within. Cannibal Corpse, a toss-up between Tomb the Mutilated, Bloodthirst, Kill. Brodequin, Festival of Death. Defeated Sanity, Psalms and the Moribund. Now, you could say this is grind, you could say this is death metal, but Mortician's Final Bloodbath Session. A Gorgasm, Masticate to Dominate. Hate Eternal, King of All Kings. Dying Fetus, Destroy the Opposition, and Decrepit Birth and Time Begins. And all for very different reasons. But they are albums that I have almost constantly got in rotation. And I listen to a lot of death metal.
I never get bored with this genre. Like I can go through phases where it's like I'm listening to brutal death for like months, and then all of a sudden it goes more into the slam territory. And like, I can just go further and further. And then I end up listening to like Florida for like 2 months straight or something.
Yeah, I feel like I had a handful of honorable mentions just because like either it didn't quite fit, or I'm like, man, because it's hard, top 5, but either maybe it wasn't quite death metal, or maybe I just didn't, I had to make room for my 5, but I'll just run through mine really quick. I feel like I'm a big Death Doom guy. I think what I realized going through my picks, but like Thor's Hammer, Dominic Dagsnot, if I can get that right, from like 96, 98. I fucking love that release. It's like production wise, it is what it is. Like you can hear like this, like just the fucking string slapping off of the fucking fretboard. But I like this release. I think the vocals are incredible. It's heavy. It kind of serves as like the starting point for like so many bands that I love: Burning Witch, Sun, Con8, Southern Lord Records. Not quite a death metal record, but definitely influenced by death metal bands. Human Remains, Using Sickness as a Hero, is maybe one of my favorite extreme metal records of all time. I cannot frown if this record comes on. I fucking love it. It's amazing. The samples, just like how weird it is. The fucking guitar, like volume knob, like crazy shit. Cannibal Corpse, I would probably go either The Bleeding or Bloodthirst. I think those are just neither vocalist there. Entombed, Left Hand Path. I also kind of like maybe death metal with like a little bit more of like a hardcore edge to it. For better or worse, this band created a style that continues to be aped for a long time, probably until the sun blows up. So take that as you will. Disembowelment, Transcendence into the Peripheral. I think this is an amazing record. Nothing like it, especially when it came out at the time. If you haven't listened to that's definitely a favorite. And then maybe more of a newer one. Maybe one of like the more like evil sounding records I've ever heard. Dragged into Sunlight's Hatred for Mankind. I really love how fucking disgusting and like heavy that record is. All the samples of like serial killers kind of scattered throughout. Like I think that's an incredible record. So
I got too fucking many, but I'm just gonna raffle through them here. You know, Cannibal Corpse, arguably being my favorite death metal band of all time. I go with Vile, Bloodthirst, Tomb of the Mutilated. Those could be alternates. Carcass, Necroticism. That could be, depending upon the day, that could have been on this list. Cryptopsy, Whisper Supremacy. I love Mike DeSavio's vocals on that one. I like the hardcore kind of adjacent vocal styling, but I also like how like precise the music got all of a sudden. With that one, like Cold Hate Warm Blood, fucking classic. And then I go to, as David mentioned, Pierce from Within. Effigy's great, but Pierce from Within just has this like non-repetition thing that I fucking love. It's just gross sounding. And then I've got Cephalic Carnage, Xenosapien, Gorguts, From Wisdom to Hate, Job for a Cowboy, Ruin Nation. Almost went with Genesis, but I felt the band became tighter with Ruin Nation and just became technically proficient, up the tuning a little bit. Things got a little bit more precise. They got Al Glassman, who's been in Goratory, and God, he was in Despised Icon for a little while and just became like this great kind of grindy writer and really quick shit. Exhumed, Anatomy is Destiny, the Return album, Disgorge, Cranial Impalement. I also wanted to throw in there a Deprecated writing his creation, Cynic Focus, Death Human, Immolation, Failure for Gods, Behemoth's The Apostasy, Dying Fetus, War of Attrition. Not the favorite of that band's catalog, but I got to see them before the album came out, so I was stoked for that record, and I still love it to this day. The Black Dahlia Murder, Ritual, that could have been one of two others. Could have been Nocturnal, could have been Deflorate, which I think is, Deflorate is like crazy fast. Dismember, Indecent and Obscene, which is the sophomore release. Like an Everflowing Stream is great, but something about Indecent and Obscene is just gross sounding, raw, has that kind of ballad at the end of it as well. Dreaming in Red. Then Annihilation of the Wicked, Morbid Angel, Domination, Hate Eternal, I Monarch, Entombed, Wolverine Blues. That's the first Entombed record I ever heard, and I can still put that on and just hear just see kids slamming. That's like just going for it. There's so much groove to that. And probably the newest one on the honorable mentions is I could have went with any Cattle Decapitation record, but for some reason, Death Atlas just hit me really hard with what they did. I kind of refer to it to myself as like their Black album, because there's so many like hit adjacent things on there. I mean, Bring Back the Plague, and the album came out before the pandemic, like right before, like the October before, and they're still touring on it. Like the tour they're doing now, they're playing primarily stuff from Death Atlas and Terracite, because they really didn't get the tour off of Death Atlas that much. But those are just my honorable mentions.
If that's not a checklist for everybody listening, I don't know what is. All right. So in no particular order, I guess it makes sense we talk about this first because this is the earliest release of everything in my selection. I'm going with Deicide's Legion, 1992. So this is their second record. It was released on RC Records. This is still one of the scariest records I have ever heard. There were two records that actually really scared me when I was first kind of discovering stuff beyond Metallica's Black Album, I guess. This was one of them. The other was Transylvanian Hunger from Dark Throne. And I heard both bands actually on a radio station called the 3 Hours of Power. There was an independent radio station called Triple J. And there was a guy from a very average local band who was a radio host. Nice guy. His band was horrible, but he really played some really cool stuff. So I would stay up listening to that. I think one of the reasons it scared me so much is because I had no visual. It was just music in a room. I had no reference of what they looked like visually. And when I heard Trafixian coming out of my speakers with the shattered glass, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is absolutely terrifying. So it still remains one of the most unhinged records. Glenn Benton sounds absolutely possessed in the most manic way possible. And to me, it is still actually their fastest record. When you listen to these riffs, like there is some serious downpicking on this record. And I guess there's been some interviews amongst the band recently about they didn't play most of the material off this album for so long, which they're doing now. As the album's kind of celebrating its anniversary. And apparently it was, the two brothers, the Hoffmans couldn't actually play the stuff live. So it really, in hindsight, it really was a step up from a lot of the other Deicide material. And I wouldn't say it's as catchy as things like Once Upon the Cross, where they really mastered like the hook. But this record is just such a scary, unhinged, possessed, evil, fast, crazy piece of work. And I just love everything about it, from the artwork, the song sequencing. I mean, I was listening to this again in the gym, and it is just crazy how mature the songwriting is on this record. And Deicide have definitely established themselves as one of the big four death metal bands in my book for very good reason. And I can't say much more that hasn't already been said about Deicide. But Legion is their record for me. So Deicide Legion.
All right, I'm going to go in chronological order here. For me, and this kind of makes sense, being that it is this frontman, guitar, mastermind birthday today at the time of recording, but I'm going to go with Death Human from 1991, released on Relativity Records. So death metal for me begins with death. I remember sitting in a basement somewhere in the suburbs and scrolling on a bunch of YouTube videos, and somehow the video for Lack of Comprehension just popped up in the feed, and like it's kind of odd, like that's just these guys playing on a stage, and then there's like a very like weird side story going on. But hearing that for the first time really just that's where it clicked. And I think I was aware of death metal as a genre before that. Like I can remember kids playing like Cannibal Corpse songs as a joke because I thought the song titles were so ridiculous. So like that's a laugh, right? But it wasn't until I heard this band that it really I kind of understood it. So I think I got Leprosy on CD after this. I stole a guy's Combat Records pressing of Scream Bloody Gore. Still got it. But this record always just kind of stands out to me as like a really they had kind of realized their sound. They had kind of shed all of the death metal tropes that had come before. I like a lot of those records. Kind of mentioned enjoying bands and eras. Like I think Death is certainly one of those bands where you can enjoy in a couple different eras. But yeah, I think Death kind of, they expelled all the older kind of like, skulls and maggots and killing and all these sorts of things. I started to kind of get a little bit more focused on some of the lyrical content on the previous record, but this is where it just kind of all comes together. They get the guys from Cynic. You have Sean Reinhard and Paul Masvidal playing with them. I think that's another great thing about this band is that Chuck always kind of surrounded himself with really talented players, and I think that rubbed off on him. But you listen to this record, it's so tight. The guitars are completely in sync. It's very melodic in that death kind of way. I don't know if it's like, I don't know theory all that well, but I don't know if it's like a harmonic minor, like Phrygian scale that Chuck would always use. It's just kind of like got that weird kind of tonal quality to it. All of his like melodies. Sean's drumming on this record is incredible. You have fucking goddamn Steve DiGiorgio playing on most of the record. And like, I don't know, all the players are there. The songwriting's there. It's got great riffs. It's pretty driving. There's not a lot of fat on this record, but then you have like songs like Cosmic Sea that they kind of get to like experiment a little bit more as well. yeah, I mean, Lack of Comprehension, Cosmic Sea. They even do a Kiss cover on some of like the deluxe versions that you can find. So when I think of where I stand as far as like my timeline and like how I got into death metal, by telling that story, I think I have to start with like Death Human. It's still like a classic record to me.
That's definitely my favorite death record. Sometimes I'll lean a little bit more towards individual thought patterns.
Sure.
But Human is just like icing on the cake. And the remaster they did a handful of years ago is not bad either. They actually bring the bass up in the mix a little bit.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Well, I will go with the most modern one on my list. And again, this could have been any album from the band's catalog, but we actually just did an episode on this album not terribly long ago. Defeated Sanity's passages into Deformity. Gateway for the band for me. That really helped me kind of get out of a slump where I wasn't listening to death metal very often. But I got into that band and just went full on, like went backwards with it, gotten all the other albums. Also was able to kind of branch out and get into brutal death metal as a whole and reestablish that I really enjoyed that. And I liked shit that just sounded like animals fighting. That band is, I think, one of the best to do it at this point. The amount of talent that is in that band is just unending. Every release that they do, I typically can find something that I truly enjoy and can like grasp a hold of. Yes, there are days that I'll put on like Psalms of the Moribund and just want to just fucking go for it and launch a kettlebell across the house. But that album, just as unhinged and as wild as this band is, this was like the perfect introduction to it, with like Naraka just like kicking right in, for Blunding's on there, like just a fucking great record.
What a tune.
Just killer, like technical death metal done in a way that doesn't seem like it's wank the entire time. It doesn't seem like it's like a classic or like a class in neoclassical guitar technique, which is like, that's my one thing when it comes to technical death metal, is that's like my trope that I don't like. I if it gets too neoclassical, I'm kind of bored with it. It's like, that's fine. But as David said, power metal's there for a reason. Some bands do it really well. Some bands don't. I think this is one of the best technical, progressive, brutal death metal bands of all time.
This fucking band, yeah, I'm swearing, this fucking band is insane. How they manage to precariously balance on the knife edge of just this like just NASA equivalent fucking technical approach to death metal, and just the most devolved, knuckle dragging Neanderthal ooga booga makes no sense.
Yes.
But they sit there and they're just kind of teetering between both worlds. And so you get this savagery and this heaviness, this like primal just vibe, for lack of a better word, that they have, but they're doing it in the most cerebral way. And they're only getting more cerebral as they're going on. And so, I love this band very much. I actually think one of their heaviest is chapters of Repugnance, but I also love this record as well, and Psalms of the Moribund as well. And when Luca and I were writing the new Atræ Bilis record, we were writing these parts where we were trying to kind of do the same thing, and we were calling these parts the quantum cave slams.
Yes. Yes.
That's kind of how I associate Defeated Sanity's music. These like quantum caveman, ideas. It's insane. So great pick.
All right, man. You're up again.
Back to you, David.
All right. Very good. Okay, next up, I'm just going through my list here. I'm going with Origins, Informis, Infinitas, Inhumanitas from 2002. This was released through the Relapse Records. And I will never, ever forget the first time that I heard this. I just need to go on record to say I don't think that there is a more perfect pairing in the world than fucking pot and death metal. Like the two things just, yeah, it's like traveling to another planet safely and kind of coming back. I think the journey that death metal can take you on, Stoned, is unlike anything else, and it's one of the very very few things I'm not going to say that I'll miss when I'm gone, but I think that it is absolutely one of my favorite parts of the human experience is smoking pot and listening to death metal. And I remember being extremely fucking high as a teenager at a friend's place. We would ritually hang out in his garage, and it was an open roller door, and friends would basically just circle through the evening and hang out for pre-drinks and then go off and do their thing and come back, and it would just be Rob and I just smoking herb and just listening to music all night. And we exchanged a lot of music that way, and it was a very important time for me because he came from hardcore. I was very into grindcore and death metal, and interpreting how his mind interpreted death metal was invaluable. But we were both hanging out in his garage. A drummer that we were playing with at the time, his name was Raj, had come over, and he was like, "Oh, I need to show you this band." And he put on Origins I. And I had never heard anything like it. It would have been around the same year that this came out. Anybody that hasn't heard Origin, it's hard to explain now just like how fast and unique they are in how they integrate sweeps with gravity blasts, but they're still being this really insane synchronicity percussively. And it was the first time that on top of these crazy speeds, I was hearing bursts of vocals that were in sync with like ride blasts. So there would be these patterns on the rides where these barks from the singer were lining up with. And it was just this whole new sound that I'd like never heard death metal take before. And it was equally the freshest shit I'd ever heard. And it was also just it was alien but uniquely human, but it just sounded so modern and so fresh, not because of the production, but just the way this band had like their own unique sound. And to me, I really it sounds like the live band that they were at in their prime. To me, this was the lineup for Origin, and the impression that this record had on me and made me think about how I composed drums when I was using drum machines was, again, invaluable. I just owe so much to this record with so many just different ideas with how to synchronize different instruments. And it might not be the same way that Origin do it, but they've really taught me a lot, and I respect them endlessly for that. I'm not a huge fan of a whole heap up past because their fourth record. It does get a little samey, but to me, my favorite records is actually their first self-titled debut, which is their heaviest, and this. So this band also, paved the way for bands like Brain Drill, Arcspy, Beneath the Massacre. We wouldn't have, tech death as we know it if it wasn't for bands like Origin and then bands like Spawn and Possession and stuff like that. So people owe these first couple of Origin records a lot more. And in reading about this, I just thought it was interesting to share that the album title was originally a play on the saying intensity, integrity, intelligence. And it was crudely translated from Latin as boundless, shapeless inhumanity, which to me is just the sickest shit ever. So I'm going with Origin, Informis, Infinitas, Inhumanitas from 2002.
My familiarity with Origin was the Antithesis album or Antithesis album from '08, and I something you said really brought that back to the kind of front of my brain, which was it got a little samey. I remember I just couldn't latch to that record. Now I listened to this album today, and I just went, okay, like I definitely need to touch base with these first couple of records because it sounds like a completely different band to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And like John Longstreth, like come on, like Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I love what he was doing with his feet. I mean, at that time, you know, he was holding blast beats and he was doing like these gallops on his feet, and there were other sections where the band would just stop and the feet would just keep rolling, and it was just his drum compositions on this record really were something else.
Well, I got another album band, the title that I'm gonna butcher the fuck out of. Dylan mentioned it earlier in his honorable mentions. Carcass, Necroticism, Descanting the Insalubrious. I love this band, and kind of harkening back to what I said about eras, this band can certainly be enjoyed in eras if you're more in line with like just kind of that nasty grindcore production and those types of songs. It's there for you. If you're looking for more like streamlined melodic death metal, you can have that too. I think Necroticism is my favorite record by this band because I think it's kind of like a great bridge between those two eras of the band. I like Heartwork a lot. I love that record. I think it's great, but I do feel like I wish so many elements from this record had found its way on Heartwork. I feel like this record, they kind of got to play around with some like wackier ideas and kind of different rhythms and melodies. And I love that. I love the dual vocal Baron Snake thing that, you know, Bill and Jeff do that they didn't continue on Heartwork. I love that this is still here. There are so many great riffs. I mean, some of the songs like have a million fucking parts in them and doesn't like, I'm not bored by it. They really just kind of got to stretch their like, you know, they took the last record, and I can't believe people gave them shit for the previous record. But this one, they were like, yep, we're throwing weird guitar harmonies and melodies on this one. So like, you guys can suck it. Maybe one of the most covered Carcass songs on this album, Corporal Jigsaw Quandary, or Jigsaw Quandary, again, fuck me. Pedigree Butchery, I love. Forensic Clinicism.
Incarnated Solvent Abuse, man.
Yeah.
With the video for it and everything.
Yep. I think there's just so much to love about this. Everybody's playing great. Your first appearance of Michael Ammett, Ken Owens, amazing. Bill Steer. I mean, like what more can really be said? Colin Richardson production, you know, obviously like mentioned a lot of these like heavy hitters. You know, on the previous record I mentioned, you have Scott Burns as well, who's, you know, his production is so influential on for so many records. Colin Richardson as well, so many great records. This is one of them, and that's why it's my pick. I love it.
It's their prog record, man. Like seriously, it's their like progressive record. I mean, there's some weird timing stuff on there, and you know, the story about Mike joining the band and how he almost joined the band earlier, and you know, Mike coming from like more of a punk and kind of what is it, crust background as well, like listening to classic rock bands as well, and being a Brit but also being a Swede. And Michael's gone on to create a lot of different music that, you know, a lot of people are into and may not be into, but to say his influence on this band isn't felt even at this point in time, even with like Torn Arteries that came out a few years ago, like it's still there. But having Bill having like a foil with Mike and just like throwing these weird guitar stuff out there. And, great fucking band. Just fun, like classic death metal. Just great shit.
The albums before this also defined the genre of gore
Yeah.
grind.
Yes.
Right.
So, we're not talking about gore grind tonight, but for this to make, one of your favorite death metal records after they've, this is their first real foray into just doing this type of style is, it just needs to be rebrought to the surface, I feel.
Yeah. Dylan, when we did our Heartwork episode, made a really good point in that, like, again, bands today ape that gore grind style that they helped create. And then, again, they helped usher in this like wave of melodic death metal. And you kind of have like, all right, well, I don't want to sound like that, so I'm going to do their like gore grind stuff, or like I have to sound like Carcass or At the Gates. So like just for there to exist like kind of essentially like two different bands within their catalog is crazy. But I just feel like this bridges the gap. I mean, there's like samples and like great like textures and like, I don't know, it's still got some of that's like kind of gross evil sounding stuff from the previous, but then they get to like shred a little bit, which I certainly enjoy. So Necroticism, it rules.
All right. So next up is it's a classic band, but a later era album. Suffocation, the self-titled from 2006. I love this fucking record. Suffocation might be the tightest live band I've ever fucking seen. And I saw them fairly recent with Ricky on vocals. And like, I'm not convinced that they weren't playing with a click, but it definitely seemed like they weren't playing with a click. That was the tightest fucking band I've ever seen. And it's just like riff after riff after riff after riff. I mentioned Pierced Within. David mentioned Pierced Within from 95. Fantastic record. But this thing was my entry point to this band. Matter of fact, I stole it from my friend Bill. Walked into his house. He wasn't listening to it. It was on the shelf. I went, yep, that's coming with me. And I just digested it. I mean, you've got Abomination Reborn on here. You have Entrails of You on here. You've got breakdowns on this record. You have a song about the BTK killer on this record. Bind, Torture, Kill. Frank Mullen is the comedian of the death metal world. There is great footage of him on some cruise drunkenly doing karaoke. Like the chops are going, everything. But like Terrence Hobb is an underrated riff master. I think this is the first full length that Derek Boyer joined on bass. And Guy, I believe is his name, Guy, who also played in Pyrexia early on. Did David, correct me if I'm wrong, Sermon of Mockery? Is that the name of the Pyrexia record?
The Pyrexia record.
The Pyrexia record, right? The only one that exists. But this album is just so fucking cool. And also like a quick little like tidbit that helped me further get into this record is around this time, I think the History Channel was doing this whole series on the Dark Ages. Suffocation is playing, I think, Bind, Torture, Kill in one of the commercials.
Oh my God.
And like the band is playing live and like a guy walks up to the janitor and like they go into this whole spiel about the Dark Ages. It's fucking Suffocation. Like Frank Mullen furiously going on, doing the whole chop shit. Like this band is great. Also, before I moved from Arkansas, my last show I ever played was opening a bill that Suffocation was headlining. It was Suffocation. We sucked horribly, but it was a free show to see Suffocation, direct support Whitechapel. This is like right around This Is Exile, maybe directly after. Psychroptic, Decrepit Birth.
God damn.
God, I think Vela Maya even. Like it was a huge bill, but like Whitechapel plays, half the room leaves, and it's just like the gnarliest fucking Suffocation set. And it just fucking ballistic. Just what a cool band, a band that I have gotten into the older I've gotten and just realized like there's not a lot of stinkers in their catalog. Like the reunion albums are great too. Like the album after this, Blood Oath, is fucking cool. The album before it, Souls to the Nine, is that the God, just great. Production's a little thin for me, but like man, just great shit. I think this band did some of its, obviously the classics are the classics, but throwing a blind eye to what the band did on Relapse Records would just be a shame for anybody that's into death metal.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wish Souls to Deny had better production, because to me the songs on that record are amongst the best that they've ever written. That's probably the last year, like that's the latest Suffocation record I personally listened to. But Breeding the Spawn also suffered from production as well. So unfortunately, they've just been a band where they've always kind of had the songs. They just haven't always been able to nail the production. A lot of people actually consider Breeding the Spawn to have their best songs on it, but it's just it's difficult to get to because of the production. But yeah, I absolutely think that they are one of the tightest and heaviest bands. It's awesome. When we were out finishing up the recording for the Ormacide sessions, Suffocation had reached out to Christian Donaldson to help get the record mixed. And so I got to hear quite a bit about how Terrence and the rest of the band were recording everything and sending it over, which was very cool. It's always very nice to kind of get those experiences and stuff. I just also want to say, I think Suffocation have got the sickest fucking logo in the game.
Oh, come on. Like,
It's
the continuation of like that little worm or reptile or whatever it is that goes throughout the whole lineage of the band. It's just so fucking cool. And there's a vibe to this band, as we mentioned in like Defeated Sanity. There's a vibe to them that is just it's world ending. Like, it is shattering. Like, anytime, like I really, really enjoyed the new record, Hymns of Apocryphia, I think it's how it's pronounced. Fucking great. The production is stellar on it. And the songs are really good, but it's like classic Suffocation, right? Like, I mean, also we've talked a little bit about Slam. Like, it's arguable who created the Slam, but everything leans toward Legion of Inveracity.
It's not. It was. It was absolutely Legion of Inveracity.
And it's like, yeah, you create that on your debut record.
Yeah, I mean, what a catalog. I mean, I also think the EP that they did, Despise the Sun, is just one of the heaviest EPs ever. Yeah, great pick, great band.
Well, what are we thinking? Got a couple more here.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is a good segue. So next up for me, I'm going with Disgorge from California with Consume the Forsaken. So the singer of Suffocation used to play drums in this band.
Yep.
Disgorge to me epitomized brutal death. If I was to describe what US brutal death sounds like, it's this band. There's no intros, there's no solos. All the vocals are guttural. It's one of the most focused pieces of death metal that there is. Not saying there aren't other bands doing focused death metal, but to me, just the sound of this record just really captures brutal death. And I don't know if it was because I've been listening to this record since, it came out, but it's sound. It's sonically, it just feels like it's made an imprint into my inner ear, and it's just always kind of craving the stimulation that this record gives me. So I'm deeply connected to this record because of its sonic heft. I don't have a whole heap to say to it. It's like trying to explain why you like the taste of something. It's just kind of in my DNA, and it's decided to attach itself to this record. I feel that this album it just rides the whole time on something that isn't hyper fast. It just feels like an upper. It's slightly faster than a mid tempo kind of BPM all the way through, but it's just grooving the whole time. It's busy. There's catches, there's fills, there's chokes, and it just keeps rolling. It just feels like there's just like, I don't want to say a train, but it really does just feel like it's just chugging along from start to end. And this has also got AJ Magana on it, who has also done vocals for Defeated Sanity. And on another week I may have picked Chile Gutted. And there was a time when I always wanted to hear this record with Matty Way. But when I listen to AJ's vocal patterns on this, so many of his vocal patterns are on the offbeat or the upbeat, and it just creates this groove that I don't know would have been accomplished with Matty Way. So Disgorge, Consume the Forsaken is absolutely a desert island record for me. And the other side projects that they did around this time were really cool as well. So they did a side project with the guys from Brodekin called Liturgy, and they just had a one-hit wonder called Dawn of Ash. Pretty raw production. It sounds like it was done around the same time that Methods of Execution was done. And they also did Cinerary, which was an EP. I think it was with the guitar player from Incestuous. And that was called Hung by Intestines, and that's amazing as well. So anyways, Disgorge, Consume the Forsaken is an absolute brutal death essential.
Before we move on from that, because that band fucking rules, Diego does the thing with guitar playing that I really like in this genre, which is it's like riffs that never end. It just feels like one continuous thing. Ron from Malignancy does that as well. And it's just like, shit just keeps going. Like there's repetition on here. There's a lot of groove on this record too, but it's like brutal death groove. Like Diego, killer guitar player. Like, I mean, just down picking hell. I believe he's playing bass and Cephalotripsy now.
Yes, yeah.
Also, there's the To Violently Vomit project, which exists, which is playing, obviously Disgorge material. But like this band, this was like, I got into Defeated Sanity and immediately went to Disgorge. Was like, boom, just dove right in, like killer fucking pick.
Yeah. I think I may have stepped on my words. The Cinerary EP was Rituals of Desecration. Sorry, Hung by Intestines was one of their songs. But yeah, Diego Sanchez, he's kind of known in the scene. His alter ego is the Riff Wizard, and
perfect.
I don't think it's just because he has the long beard. He does have those super, super long. To me, it's an evolved Suffocation riff. They kind of took what Suffo were doing, and instead of going with the slammy side, they were just like, okay, well, how do we have this super saturated, again, sounding just like tech death, long riff that just sounds like it's going on, and where is its tail and where does it start again? And I think that is why this record is on my list, because the repeatability of this record is it's always there, because there aren't the hooks that normally come with listening to comfortably listenable bands. It feels more that it's a clinic. And this record is definitely a clinic in brutal death.
My next record comes from a band that I was early on in my discovery. This could have been several records by them. Morbid Angels, Gateways to Annihilation from 2000. Earache Records. I kind of like the Lack of Comprehension video. I was like hooked on seeing Blessed Are the Sick, that video. I grew up in like a somewhat Catholic household, so seeing like some of that imagery was like, this seems fucked up. Like, I don't, what is happening here? And then quickly got Altars of Madness, tons of just like crazy, wild, demonic shit on that. Lovecraftian. The guitar sounds on all over that tray is just like an animal. So, you know, like having someone like Chuck who, you know, certainly more rooted in, you know, the scale and some theory, I guess, where like Trey, their rules are like fucking out the goddamn window. It is so much more about like as David said, like there's a vibe, there's an atmosphere to it, there's an aura. So I felt like it could have been either of those two early records. But hearing this for the first time was like almost as if like the band, I want to say like reinvented themselves, but they just like kicked down like the next century, like with like they kicked down the door, and it's almost as if they like, I like Blessed Are the Sick a lot because I feel like it has this kind of lumbering, almost like doomy kind of pace. It almost feels like a Death Doom record in parts. Some of this record kind of takes some of that, but it feels so modern. Like it could have been released at any point. I think with those earlier records, I love the vibe of those records, but they do feel very like of the time they were released in. Whereas this is just like classic. Like there's no, I don't know. It just could have been dropped at any point. So, I mean, like the riffs on this record are great. That classic, like Morbid Angel octave riff. The drumming on this fucking record is amazing, Pete. I'd never really even listened to like a Steve Tucker record before I heard this. Those vocals are insane. Even Trey's vocals on some of this shit is great. Eric Rutan. I mean, who are we talking about? Like his like second, and I think this was his last record. So I don't know. This record is it's just something else. It feels like for a band to almost just like have the, I don't want to say again, I don't want to like say second wind, but it just almost like coming into a whole new era and like putting out a record like this is really fucking insane. Summoning Redemption, He Who Sleeps, At One With Nothing. I mean, there's so many great tracks on this record. I love it. I think it's amazing.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite Morbid Angel record as well. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that this is your favorite, knowing that, you know, the common thread here is Death Doom, with you for, you know, a lot of your tastes. I think this record is equally their slowest and their fastest record at the same time.
Yeah, right.
I agree. Those kick drums. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like,
no.
But like Pete's kicks on this thing,
there were
like, I was listening to it not terribly long ago going, there's no fucking way this is real. But it's like, it's Pete. This is, if this album were released at any other time, because like 2000 was like, everything was kind of at a weird lull with like death metal. Like if this had came out when Heretic came out, like Jesus Christ.
I also love Heretic though. Like that album gets a lot of shade, and I would say that is actually probably my second favorite to this, which might be a hot take, but it is what it is. I would also say that when visuals come to my mind when I listen to this record, it almost feels like they've kind of somehow broken through the stratosphere and they're actually in space, which I don't know has actually happened on their other records. Or they've gone past space and they're somewhere else, right? But this just kind of feels like there's just like this floating quality about it.
The brain of Trey Azekto is just fucking something to be studied at some point. I'm not familiar with the Heretic record at all, so I don't even have an opinion on that. But it just, the songwriting on this thing, it's like you took, I made the joke about a band called Gaucha years ago, called it God of Emptiness Core. And like, this is that thing. That's the Morbid Angel thing. And it's this record, just those lumbering kind of like almost falling apart riffs that Trey's got. And just the spacey vibe that this thing has. And it does. It feels like it's something out in the void somewhere. Is it arguably the darkest record the band's ever done too? Like the album artwork is tremendous on this thing.
Got Dan Seagrave coming back for this one too. Oh man. Which
kind of a different one for him.
Right. Yeah. It's a great record. It's I would have to say again, like on any given day, the first two could be my favorite, but like, you know, this one, I feel like you have to highlight it. It's just so great.
Yeah. All right. Let's get fucking weird and like chaotic and feral. None so vile. I mean, come the fuck on. Like, we all know the stories about it. We all know about Lord Worm and what the fuck was he talking about. He doesn't even know he's writing poetry. They're getting drunk. They're falling in the snow. I mean, geez. I think Cryptopsy has eras as well. I think Cryptopsy could be one of my favorite death metal bands. I think there's one of their albums in particular I'm not the biggest fan of. It's not a bad record. I will say that. It's not terrible. It's experimentation. And I think they got a lot of shit for something that wasn't that bad overall. But none so vile. I come back to this record so often. The groove on this record just drives me wild. These like borderline slam riffs. The mix on this thing is intense. It's insane. It's just like pushed to the red. Everything's loud. Flow, one word, like Flow is Flow, like an ungodly drummer. He's also not on the grid on this thing either. So like there's hits that are slightly softer and like it's just got hair all over it. The songwriting on this thing is second to none for me. It's got melodicism with like Phobophile. Like it's got an it's got an Army of Darkness sample. Sorry. Right at the tail end of this record. I mean, the band is touring this record as we speak, and it's a classic. I downloaded the entire album off of LimeWire individually just so I could hear it and have it. And I killed that computer, but man, I got this great record out of it that still is a favorite. If you want to dig deeper on this record, we did an episode quite some time ago on it. None so vile, just a great descriptor of what death metal could be. And I think Cryptopsy were one of the bands keeping death metal alive kind of in the late 90s when it kind of hit a lull, like Hate Eternal, Nile, Cryptopsy. I'd even throw Immolation in there because they kind of had a gap between albums. God, what else can be said about this fucking record?
I actually got to hear this with the isolated tracks at Christian's place. So he
Oh my
baked the
God.
tapes, and he was doing I think it was URM Academy, kind of breaking down the mix and remixing the record. So when we were recording, I actually got to hold the original tape.
Oh,
Yeah, it felt like something I probably shouldn't drop. You know? Yeah, it was a couple of nights after that. We would hang out on his patio and have a couple of drinks and just kind of hang out and talk, just, you know, get to know each other and stuff. And we're talking about that record, and Christian, the guitar player from Cryptopsy, for anybody who's listening who hasn't clued on yet, who's also an amazing producer who's worked for Suffocation and other bands. His favorite record is from Cryptopsy is Whisper Supremacy. And mine is this as well. And he asked, "Oh, do you want to go hear the tracks?" So it was really cool listening to it with him because when you get to hear the isolated tracks, you could really hear the decisions that the engineer was making about which mics to fold down into a single track. And there were only, I believe there were only 8 tracks at least on the drums. I don't think it was many more than that in total. It definitely wasn't more than 16. I was pretty drunk by the time that we got to hear it, but I remember hearing Lord Worm's isolated vocals, and when you hear them isolated, it's a very different record because you can truly hear how whined out he is. And apparently he went into those sessions and laid down all the vocals in less than an hour. It was something in the range of like 45 to 50 minutes. And when you hear his vocals soloed without anything else, except, you know, some bleed from the headphones kind of coming in to the microphone, he really is just a drunkard, just bellowing into this microphone. it's absolutely unhinged, and I think that it definitely has that lightning in a bottle that you just wouldn't capture with how bands are recording records now. And I think that, this is on every single, top 10 death metal albums of all time lists for good reason. Um, you know, it's it's unquestionably one of the greatest death metal records of all time, and definitely put Canadian death metal on the map.
Yep.
All right, bud. You're up again.
Ooh, okay. Second last, I am going with Decapitated's Winds of Creation.
Hell yeah.
This was released in 2000 through a subsidiary of Earache Records called Wicked World. I remember hearing this and just hearing the very first kind of like and then it was just like, what? I'd never heard an album start that way. It was just the most fuck you I'd ever heard an album start. I remember seeing the artwork, and it also being able to capture musically what I was interpreting to be like this perfect mashing of these like traditional death metal sensibilities with this very modern take. And then I learned how young these kids were. And it was even sicker because it was like, well, that's why it sounds so fresh. But then it was scary because it was like, how long have these kids been playing for? Because they are so good. Like, it is scary how good these kids were. I think it put a real fire under my tail, in that this record really, it's more than just a death metal record. To me, it exemplifies that not only is age just a number, but also like certain people are here on a planet for a purpose. And I just don't think, these especially Vogue, and his brother, that they were on this earth to play death metal. That cannot be argued. And this was our glimpse into them, doing what they're here to do. So I love this record. It's not a perfect record in that if I was to have produced it, I think, a lot of the songs could have had a bit of fat maybe trimmed off them and tidied up some of the songwriting on the second half of the record. But I've also listened to it enough that I'm patient enough knowing that there are payoffs coming later on down the record. And I think it's okay to have a mind that's waiting for something to come rather than just having this instant gratification all the time, which unfortunately I think is, it's becoming lost. So this album, the riffs have definitely etched its way into my brain. I hear a lot of people compare my own music to Decapitated, but the Decapitated isms that I'm hearing in my own music, to me, actually are more reminiscent of the later records of Decapitated. I don't know that I even have the chops to play Winds of Creation, start to finish. Maybe I do. I haven't tried, but the fretboard wizardry on this record, just the riffs, just the rhythm, is nuts. And although I do like the more mechanical kind of heavier era of Decapitated, if you can call slower heavier, I guess that is up to debate. This album to me was just, I just remember it just dropping my jaw on the ground. And I still listen to this and I just think, the bassist was 16 when they recorded this, Vitek, the drummer, was 15 when they recorded this. Vogue was 17 when they recorded this. Like it's just fucking crazy. And it still rules, man. So yeah, Decapitated's Winds of Creation for me.
What a fucking band. Truly, like what a band. I think we might have even said this in a prior episode, but to kind of get way in the weeds here, there's when the talks of a Pantera reunion happened. I have said since day one, there's one dude that could do it, and it's Vogue. It's always been Vogue.
I'm with
the
you.
way he plays, it's like you hear it, you're like, that's him. You're like, that's him.
Yeah.
Like the connection with the brothers as well. Like the Organic Hallucinosis album. Am I pronouncing that right? That album added such a weird element to this band when it came out, because that's the first record I ever heard was that, and I went backwards, and just hearing how locked in they were just on that, and then going backwards and going, oh, it gets wilder. the earlier you get with this band, the wilder this shit gets, and like Spheres of Madness and all of that. Like what a locked in right hand that Vogue has.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, the age thing it still blows my mind. I mean, I think the other thing about this record was just how humbling it was to me when I first heard it, because I was also a teenager, and I thought that the band that I was playing in at the time was one of the tightest local bands that there was. And I still look back and I think, Jesus fucking Christ, like we were crazy tight. But then this album comes around, and it kind of shows you that maybe you're not as good as you think you are.
Right.
And I think I needed that from this record, and I'm eternally grateful for it. And I think that this album will always humble me, because it doesn't matter how old I am. I would never have been able to produce a record like this at that age ever. And it's just magic. It really is. Yeah, I agree with you. When we kind of talk about Pantera, I've had this discussion with many other people, many other producers and band members, and those of us who are Decapitated fans and Pantera fans all say the exact same thing. We all know in our heart of hearts that it shouldn't have been the Machine Head gig that Vod had for a minute. It should have been Pantera. And I would have loved to have heard him write a new Pantera record.
Jesus.
That's what I would love to hear.
All right. My next pick. We have done a serious undertaking of a discography deep dive with this band before. I'll just get right into it. It's Cattle Decapitation, The Harvest Floor from 2009. At the beginning of our show, we did this discography deep dive of Cattle Decapitation. We've only really done two because they are a serious undertaking. Listening to every one of these records, we were still trying to figure out what we were doing as a show, how to research, how to just organize our thoughts and collaborate with one another. But we did it. We tried our best, and it's been a while since I have really revisited a lot of this stuff, because I listened to it. I listened to all of it. And but naturally, when we were thinking of a list, this was a band that came up. So again, really hard to pick a record, because so many of them could have ended up in my top 5. I think The Harvest Floor is, for one, like a really good starting point to getting in what the band is essentially doing now. I think this is where it, like, the Anthropocene, Monolith, Death Atlas, I think it kind of really starts to happen around this record. I love the early grind records, like finding out that this band essentially was like a side project of the Locust was like such a wild thing that they had been attached to. It's a crazy record. I think they're so technical. I mean, like Josh Elmore is like one of the craziest guitar players I've ever heard. Travis Ryan is a vocalist. I think he has like impeccable range, and you kind of even hear on this record where, you know, he's kind of like shifted into doing some more of these, like, I don't know, like heavy metal, more traditional style. Like, I don't know, it's still gruff, it's still rough, but he will go and do these like low guttural vocals and then do these kind of like interesting highs. And you start to hear it around this record too. Dave McGraw, incredible drummer. Buck, Troy, bass player. I also love that they include some of their, like, these guys listen to a lot of music so much. You have like Jarbo from Swans on here, Ross Sewage from fucking Exhumed and like Ghoul, and Dino Samis from fucking Phobia and Noothgrush, dude from Sissy Spacek. I don't know. There's just a lot to love about this record. I think it sounds amazing. It sounds absolutely batshit crazy, but then you'd have like moments like the Harvest Floor is like an incredible like kind of setting you know, it's a great like track to kind of set the tone of the record. And Body Farm, fucking
that's the Jarbo track, right?
Yeah, she's singing on that.
Yep.
She just came in and did it. Like, I think they were surprised that they like, yeah, she just came in, did her shit, and that was it. The Right Beneath the Rhine. God, there's great tracks. 37 minutes. It's impeccable.
The song title that always sticks out to me on this album is Tooth and Ammo and Concrete.
Yeah, it's a great
like
track
that
too.
is, man, this is the first time I saw the band. I saw them at like a tiny venue in Arkansas. And just on tour for this record was like up front, like dead, like I was looking the man in the face, and just like, what a wild fucking band to see where they're at now, where they were with this. In that deep dive, you know, this band obviously had eras. I think you started to see this kind of dark progression from this band with Karma Bloody Karma. And then you get the Harvest Floor, and like, it just sets them off. Like, whether you love them or you hate this band, like to see like a band that somehow didn't really have any sort of aspirations to become this big touring death metal act, which is, they're kind of a symphonic death metal band at this point. With like all of the vocal arrangements and choral sounding things that they've got on, they're pretty straight. It's kind of like stadium death metal at this point with how it sounds.
I mean,
and
weren't they on like that arena tour with like fucking Amon
Carcass and Amon Amarth? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah.
Killer band. Great band for like my upbringing into death metal as well.
Yeah, it's very like proficient. There's still like so much feel and like so many great riffs, and I think you could start at the beginning and really just, I mean, even now to this day, in my opinion, they're releasing some of the best stuff of their career. I enjoy the hell out of it.
Just another common thread here. So Travis Ryan, the singer, used to play drums in a very early band called Strangulation, which actually had the riff wizard himself, Diego Sanchez, playing guitar. I think they all went to the high school or something together.
Dylan, are you on your last one?
Second to last.
Shit. That's right.
It's a quick one though.
Hey.
It's Carcass. I debated putting this on here because to me, is it a death metal record? Could it be? Yes. Can it? Maybe it's not. You judge that. I love At the Gate Slaughter of the Soul, but this is my Slaughter of the Soul. This is my record that got me into the aspect that you could be a death metal band and have melody and have harmony and all of it. This is it. This is what got me into the Black Dahlia Murder. This was the gateway record for all of the melodic elements of death metal that I love. The Arch Enemies, the Entombs, the Dismembers, In Flames, you name it. This is where it started. This to me is a perfect record. The production is massive on this thing. The fact that this was one of the first records that they used like a 5150 with a boost in front of it to like help modernize kind of like that sound. The Geiger artwork is what drew me to this thing. And the fact that it is non-typical Geiger artwork. There's no phalluses. There's nothing of that nature on here. I love this record so much. Buried Dreams, Embodiment, the title track. I could keep going, but we did a 2-hour episode on this. And I would much rather hear the two co-hosts of this episode talk about their records. But Carcass Heartwork, fantastic album.
David, is this your final? Is this your final five?
This is
Your
it.
five? Damn. The moment we've all been waiting for.
Very, very cool. Okay, so I just need to preface this that, I'm not always a fan of, bands kind of regurgitating stuff that's been done in the past. I've already kind of made that admonishment up top. And, right now, there's that, I guess there's the gateway, from hardcore bands discovering Obituary and Bolt Thrower and doing that stuff. And then we've also kind of got this other side of death metal that's trendy right now, which is unfortunately really kind of taking away, a lot of my love for the genre. But that being said, this record changed the game. And if it wasn't for this band, we wouldn't have glam as its own kind of style. So we're going back to 1999 and we're talking about Devourment's Molesting the Decapitated. This to me is one of the fucking heaviest records in existence. It's as heavy as death metal can get with a live band. I think sonically it only gets heavier with bands like Mortician, with that big wall of guitars and just this, hyper blasting drum machine that can only be recreated with drum machines and guitars tuned that low and playing riffs that low. But Devourment, they took the heavy, chuggier parts of Suffo and they took the hyper blasting of early Cryptopsy and they created this amazing sound that incorporated the contrast and the counterpoint of those two ends of still extreme and still technical kind of death metal and just pushed it over the edge. And the thing that I always really loved about Devourment is they never wrote truly heavy songs at the expense of really brilliant songwriting. And I think that as the band has continued through their career, their songwriting only gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So in some ways, this, you could say this is some of their dumbest stuff, but this is just such a mecca of brutal slamming death that it wouldn't be right for me to have my own personal list and not bring this up. The vibe of this band too, they lyrically it's truly sick. The cover art is an actual photo of a naked decapitated guy, and when I first heard this, they were so underground that there wasn't any censorship. It's like, who's buying this? Nobody, right? So it was different to the Cannibal Corpse stuff where, you'd buy it and there'd be almost like this fake kind of slipcase over the top. And I remember picking this up in a local kind of, it was a metal store in downtown Melbourne City. And I remember picking it up and just seeing this cover and just thinking like, holy shit, this is just crazy. And then hearing it, it's just so raw. The vocals are just so low. And the samples were, they were from interviews with actual serial killers. And it was just more serious than like what a lot of other bands were doing with like the more fantastical kind of painted album covers and, staying on this safer side of the lyrical content. And I just think that this band just truly kind of flew the flag for just sickness, just pure death metal sickness. And if it wasn't for this band, we wouldn't have the other bands that have been brought up before, you know, like Cephalotripsy being one of them. And bands have made entire careers out of this, like Abominable Putridity and Extermination, Dismemberment, Peeling Flesh, Bicardectomy. Like they all owe it to Devourment. And I'm really happy to see that they're still around, and they've now got the stabbing guitar player Murph, I think his name is, playing guitar with them now. So he's a great guitar player, and I'm curious to hear how he and Brad, the drummer, are kind of composing the new stuff. But I think that their latest record was one of their heaviest as well. And
that thing was rad.
It's crazy how sick it is. It's crazy how sick it is. Yeah. And it sounded a lot like Molesting the Decapitated to me. I think that those two albums are very much kind of like, I don't want to say twins, but, you know, they're definitely, it feels like there's a very close connection between the two of them. And, you know, a lot of that's obviously got to do with Brad being on the drummer on both those records. But this album is just, it's so catchy as well as it being heavy, and these hooks that they have. It's there in spades. There's nothing dumb about this band. They might sound low and slow and brutal and fast, but this is one of those perfect examples of death metal when you start to really interpret the language and the soundscape of the style, you start noticing these just kernels of smartness emerging, and they are absolutely there intentionally. It's not like these kernels have been placed there by, you know, randomly. So that's off to Devourment, and, you know, the rest of the Texas death metal kind of scene, because there's no shortage of sick Texan death metal bands. Yeah, I'm closing this out with Devourment, Molesting the Decapitated.
All right. My last pick kind of has to do with our last episode of Riff Worship. You know, as I've kind of mentioned, I became a fan of death metal through some of the earlier bands, so I was no stranger to the first couple records out of this band's discography. But I, you know, with a lot of these genres, I like bands that push it forward, even like later in their career when you think you've done it all. But Gorguts, Colored Sands from 2013. I think our friend at Meteor Gem, Mikhail, kind of put it best when he was like, all right, like Gorguts inspired like a wave of bands with like Obscura and From Wisdom to Hate. And then, you know, there's this kind of period of time where they were just gone. But there were so many bands that had taken from that. And I feel like even like this record is like, all right, they put out into the world this influence, and then like this record is almost kind of getting some of that back. Like you're enlisting the help of some of the guys that even were inspired by those records, essentially. This is also a record I feel like that needs to be kind of enjoyed as one piece. I think it's the longest record I have on my list at like just over an hour, but you know, it's kind of really hard for me to even pick one song in particular because it's heavy, it's pummeling, but there are just so many like kind of spacier parts and clean moments. I mean, even like the kind of instrumental track, is it the Battle of Chamdo or Chamdo? Like, I don't know. I was later to this era of this band. And I hadn't really spent a lot of time with you know, later era Gorguts, but and I still need to listen to that EP. Man. You know, I heard you talk it up on the last episode. I've not checked it out, but it really is just kind of a different sort of death metal. And you know, even with Luke being like this classically trained like composer and violinist, and you hear more of that on this record than you did Obscura. I just think this is like really from Obscura, From Wisdom to Hate, and then you get this record. Like what the fuck? Like I had to include this one in there for sure.
It's a modern classic.
Yeah, it's like to take a break, you know, and maybe he even wasn't going to come back and do this project. I don't want to speak for him, but like to come back and write like maybe one of the best records of your career to me isn't truly insane. So I hope to hear whatever they've been cooking up soon, whatever it is. I would love to hear it. And yeah, even obviously Colin as well, being he produced this record, he helped record it and mixed and mastered it. I mean, it sounds incredible. So yeah, Colored Sands, Gorguts. It's a pretty good one.
So speaking on Colin, I don't know if you've ever listened to him, but I'm sure David has. Behold the Arctopus was a project that he was in. And the video you can find on YouTube is the worst band in the world. And it's them like demoing riffs. Colin's playing a war guitar at this point. Like, that's where I first knew of Colin. I knew he was a fucking just madman at that point. And the fact that he was able to join Gorguts and help move that band forward. Also, his bandmate from Dysrhythmia for a little while, joined in on guitar. But I want to say this too. We talked about this being a comeback record. Obviously, my last pick was Carcass. Surgical Steel came out in 2013.
Yeah, that's crazy too.
Which is fucking bonkers. Two vastly different sounding records. But I also want to say that book-ending Colored Sands with Molesting the Decapitated as the last like two in a row is fucking great. Just to show how different death metal can be.
Oh, and not even to forget that there's another connection with their picks that John from Origin plays on this record.
Yeah, that's right.
It's all there.
It's all there.
Connected. Wow.
More Canadian power too, baby.
Well, it's time for my last pick, but I have a request. My friend Bill from Arkansas that I grew up with, that we were kind of like, if there was a marriage of two dudes riding together and like learning how to become better musicians together, it was he and I. We lived roughly 2 miles from each other. We see each other every day. We would practice in our band 4 to 5 days a week, 4 to 6 hours a day. So we got proficient. But I had him pick 5 records. And we're just going to start from number 5. Number 5 was Deflorate by the Black Dahlia Murder. He had the same semblance that I did. Could have been Ritual, could have been Nocturnal, but he said overall, this is his favorite death metal record of all time, to a point that he will be buried in his tie-dye Deflorate t-shirt that he bought. Next one is Cannibal Corpse Kill. Obviously, there's a bit of a tie in there. Job for a Cowboy, Genesis. Beneath the Massacre's recent one, Fearmonger. Number 2 for him.
Canada.
Yeah, there we go. And then number 1, Monolith of Inhumanity, Cattle Decapitation. He noted that everything basically started with the Harvest Floor. He goes, but this is just where it kind of got fine-tuned and went from there. So my friend Bill, I wanted to get his 5 in because I wouldn't be in the death metal without helping him get into death metal and vice versa, and just like testing each other and finding like what's the next best thing we can listen to. What are we doing? What are we listening to now? But my last pick is not only my favorite death metal record of all time, it is the first death metal record I truly got into that I would consider a classic like death metal record for me. From point A to point B, it changed my world. I became a better player. I became a better songwriter. I needed to know everything from this fucking band. It is, to me, Kill. It is the classic. And I have 3 different fucking versions of this thing. I have a fucking picture disc.
I was so convinced you were going to say 6 Feet Under's Graveyard Classics.
Oh, man. Graveyard Classics 4 with the Metallica cover, right?
Oh, boy.
Or Nazareth, or Hair of the Dog.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, now you're messing with the son of a bitch.
God.
Kill. I mean, one of the very first things we ever recorded for this podcast, when it was still a school project, we talked about The Time to Kill Us Now. This album, I get emotional talking about this fucking record because it means that much to me. I listened to it today before we hopped on. The opening scream from George Fisher on this fucking record is bone chilling. He does it numerous times throughout the record. Just the track list alone on this thing. You have classics, Make Them Suffer, The Time to Kill Us Now, Death Walking Terror, which is gruesome, how straightforward that song is, and how massive it is. I think this is the first record that they used this G sharp tuning. You know, the songwriting on this, you've got Rob Barrett back in the band. You've still got Pat in the band. Alex is a songwriting monster. He likes to fuck with time signatures, groups of 3s and 9s and 12s. Good God Almighty. I mean, I can hear shit in my head to this day just sitting still. Like, this record impacted everything for me. I would not be in the death metal without this. I would not be into as a vast array of extreme metal without this. I mean, Jesus Christ, I've had multiple Cannibal Corpse shirts. I was waiting. This is a bootleg. I was waiting for like an actual like reprint, and I got it too. I've got one from the tour I fucking saw. My first fucking death metal show was Cannibal Corpse on this album. It was Cannibal. It was Necrophagist. It was Dying Fetus. It was Unmerciful. Like, it wrecked my fucking brain. This was before death metal got popular again. So like, it was gnarly fucking people at this venue. I saw blood in the floor in the bathroom. I saw vomit in corners. It just changed my fucking world. It's arguably one of my top 5 favorite records of all time. It is so fucking intense. I think this also started a trilogy of records. I think you got Evisceration, Plague, and Torture. There was like a great trilogy with all of that. You also have the first album to ever work with current band member and fucking maestro himself, Eric Rutan. I mean, it's ungodly death metal. It's as close to a classic I think the band has now. And it's 20 years old this year. That's not to slag any of the other records. I love them all. I think with Cannibal, though, later on, you get an album that has a few really solid fucking songs you know are going to be just like live staples. But with Kill, it changed my fucking world, man. You even have like their second only instrumental in this with Infinite Misery. That is like a Pat O'Brien song. And it's just this dirgy fucking track. God, I could keep going. This is like, George is the Cannibal Corpse vocalist. I like Chris Barn albums. I like The Bleeding. I think Tomb of the Mutilate's the best of the first era. But George is the guy. Like, he enunciates. You can hear every word he says. The rhythmic timing he has, like how he's able to project that type of vocal. It's insanity. The guitar sound. I mean, it's just a thick wall of just aggression. Alex has influenced a world of bass players out there. You don't have death metal bass playing being a thing without him. And the fact that like there's a reason a Spectre Euro is kind of like the standard for death metal bass now. It's because of Alex. They're a great sounding instrument. Like, guys used them before, but it's him. And the fact that they're all kind of genuine guys. You can see any interview, they're willing to talk about their fanaticism. They wear whatever they listen to, they're wearing. They're taking out young bands. I mean, the second time I saw them was like Obscura, The Faceless, Neuraxis, another Canadian band. I can't say enough. I could do a whole 4-hour episode on just this album. It's that important to me.
Often, you know, Luke is my best buddy, and you know he plays drums. So I get to see him a lot, and we talk about death metal a lot, obviously. And when we talk about death metal a lot, we talk about Cannibal Corpse a lot, and Kill is also talked about a lot. They've got so many good albums, but Kill really, it really felt like that it was more ferocious than a lot of everything else they'd been doing for quite some time. I mean, Bloodthirst was kind of the album before this where it was like, oh, okay, the songs are really there. The technicality on the Wretched Spawn, a lot of people really liked, but to me it sounded a little too kind of, dare I say, just a little lifeless. But Eric Rutan's production on the Kill, I don't think Cannibal Corpse have ever sounded better. Like, I think the Kill sonically is like the heaviest that they've ever sounded. And yeah, I think the only thing that might make this album more perfect would be if the album cover was a little bit different. That's the and that's not taking away from the quality of the record by any stretch. Um, but I do remember listening to this the day that it came out. I went and I bought it on CD, and I had a Discman at that time, and there was a hammock in the backyard, and it was summertime, and I just put my cans on and just sat in the hammock and listened to Kill. And I remember just thinking, man, life is fucking sweet sometimes. Day off, hammock, sun's out. This album is insane. Yeah, I mean, it is tough. I mean, I think the reason my personal favorite from Cannibal Corpse is Tomb of the Mutilated is just because of how guttural, serious, scary,
Oh my God.
no nonsense it is. It almost sounds like their most sterile. And I just love the influence that record had on other bands. But if I had heard Kill before hearing Tomb of the Mutilated, or Bloodthirst, or even Gallery of Suicide, I think that this would be probably my favorite. But because I just heard the other records before this, this is it's a serious watermark in their discography.
It's a fucking barn burner. It's blistering. I mean, for a band that has been essentially consistent for 35 years, it's nuts. It's nuts to have an album show up like this that far into your career. A lot of people kind of shrugged them off once Barnes left. Vile, great record. I think it's a fantastic record. And I mentioned at the top of the episode, the reason I got into death metal was I wanted to become a better musician, and Cannibal always used technicality to the songwriting credit as opposed to show, here's what we can do with this. We know what you can do. We know how good you all are. But I think with Kill, it was like, oh, now it all makes sense. The kind of playing around with the technicality and the albums before it and kind of that second half of George's first wave, you get it kind of finalized, and just, it's like a bullet to the head on this record. I mean, everything is just there. The proficiency is there. It's like, all right, but you can still have like just a grooving 4 on the floor monster like Death Walking Terror creeping out.
Yeah, I mean, there's some other songs on here that are lesser spoken about as well. I mean, I was also listening to this recently, and just the sheer speed of some of these rhythms is absolutely not to be winked at. What was the song? I think it was like Murder Worship. Yes, there's that.
Yes.
And it's just like, I mean, my tongue isn't even kind of galloping as fast as these gallops are. The other thing I've really appreciated about Cannibal Corpse, to me, which like is the death metal sound, is like endurance, right? Like, I really appreciate bands that are like holding a blast beat for bars and bars and bars, and just creating a pocket for the guitars to just groove in without too many fills, and getting to breaking it up. And it's the same with the guitar riffs. When you've got these big long gallops and you know that the forearms are burning, it's like, well, it'd be very easy just to kind of do like a pick hammer or a hammer or a slide and just like give this arm a bit of a break. But this band has always been so locked into just like not taking the easy route for their riffs. And I also think that, although there are like, dare I say, like better drummers than all in ways of like, I guess, ergonomics and speeds, there's absolutely no doubt that he's the perfect drummer for this band. And I've never heard the same arguments that are made about Metallica and Lars ever apply to Cannibal Corpse. And I think a lot of that's got to do with, we spoke about groove earlier. Cannibal Corpse have got groove in spades. And I think a lot of that's got to do with Paul's drumming, especially his big open kind of just like Slayer beats with his ride. And it just really lets the riffs kind of break out. And that's all over this record as well. So it definitely, this record is an amazing entry point also, I think, for anybody who hasn't heard Cannibal Corpse. I would say this is probably one of the more digestible records, as well as it also being one of the heaviest. So awesome pick.
Well, we did it. Are we better for it? I don't know.
I think we are.
We learned a lot, and it was fun. And there's a lot of great records out there, obviously. And I think if anything, it just shows that like there are so many different shades of this genre that you can get into. There's certainly, we don't all like the same thing. And there's a lot that I learned from this episode, a lot of stuff that I'm going to check out. But also there's newer bands that are always coming out, that are constantly coming out all the time. So I'd love to hear kind of like our recommendation section of like what's some new stuff you've been listening to? What are some bands that you feel are doing it right in the modern age?
When I look at newer bands, I look at two things. What are they doing to help further the genre, and what are they doing to help out other bands as well? But along with that, I look at things that just sound fresh to my ear. So I've got a bit of a list, just going to knock it out. I think you start out with Sanguisugabogg, just because they've taken out Despised Icon. They've taken out Defeated Sanity on a headliner. They're about to do a tour with Dying Fetus in the fall. They've got a lot of hype right now. I do think their most recent album was fantastic. I thought it helped kind of finalize what the band should sound like. I think they're a great band for anybody younger getting into the genre, that they can go, oh, this is a really, there's elements of further styles of death metal in this band. And I think that's a great thing when it comes to death metal, because that's, I think, how a lot of us got into it, were like gateway bands. And I think Sanguisugabogg is a good gateway band. David's band, Atræ Bilis, fantastic fucking band. Look, Fireworks.
Wow. Atræ Bilis 3, baby.
I mean, what a breath of fresh air. When I first discovered Apex Apian all those years ago, and it being on $20 spin and going, this doesn't sound typical to this label. This sounds like what I'm used to hearing. Just the approach with it. And then Homicide comes out, and just, I dove headfirst into that fucking record. And, album 3, can't wait. I know we've talked a little bit about it, but again, bands that are carrying the flag. One that David and I chatted about a handful of months ago, Deliquis. Such a cool fucking band, man.
Fuck yeah.
Such a cool fucking band. Blood Incantation for the weirder, spacier stuff. Revocation, Dave Davidson. Fantastic fucking player. Kind of started out more in the thrash vein, but have gotten weirder and more atonal and more spacier. And I think they do a really good job of helping kind of bridge the gap for a lot of people. Outer Heaven does one of the few bands that I like that do the kind of like cavernous vocal sound, but also takes influence from like Gateways era Morbid Angel and Bloodthirst and Gallery of Suicide era Cannibal. Let's see, Party Cannon, I mentioned, just ignorant, dumb fucking slam shit. That is just so much fun. It's about partying. I would even go as far as saying Ingested could help kids get into brutal death metal. And Slam, if that's your thing, like there's an element there, like you make your own decision what you really want to listen to, but great entryway band. Their name has been thrown around. They're on Metal Blade Records now a lot. I would even say this, and I don't even consider them a death metal band, but just because one of the members in this band kind of carries the flag for really aggressive death metal. Fit for an Autopsy. I think Blue, being the bassist in that band and just being like a billboard for all things brutal and technical, and his band Dysentery is fantastic. I saw an interview with him recently. He's in Inveracity, sweatshirt. So it's like that's helping kids get into death metal, or like anybody that's missed it. But last, I have a band that I just discovered a few days ago called Lago, with their album Vigil that just came out. Jesus. Like, I know they've been around a little bit, but it's just a fucking stellar record. And it's like, damn, there's still shit coming out there that excites me.
Dylan mentioned Atræ Bilis. I'm going to second that too. Can't wait for the new record to come out. It said I like Death Doom. I like Dream Unending a lot. I like that record so much. Justin Detour. And then you got Derek from Tomb Mold writing some really cool, kind of sparse, purdy sounds. And then it's heavy and it's death metal. I like that a lot. There's like all this disso death stuff going on. Defacement. I love all of their records. I think they're great. I think they have a lot of influences outside of death metal, from like noise to like fucking math rock and just all sorts of stuff. Doomed was the last record we had them on the show. I think, just mixing like death and like black metal and like all these different influences, and I really enjoy it. And then from my local scene, Wretched Blessing, they're a 2-piece from here. It's like death metal and black metal and hardcore. There's some like really kind of like interesting wonky grooves that this band does. Love grooves, love death metal. So yeah, check it out.
Great lists. Thank you both for very kind mentions. Yeah, excited for you to both hear what we've been cooking, and I'll send you some stuff so I get to hear it myself. Hopefully it's not too long for you. I'm not going to let you wait as long as the release date is. But I guess, similar, I also really like death metal that, is kind of, widening the walls. And so there's a few releases here, and I guess, they're all kind of tied to like a very kind of similar niche of the genre, where like Extremity is the key focus here. But there's definitely 3 bands that I think are really kind of fresh, but also unrelenting, that should really, they deserve every death metal listener's attention. So there's 3 records here I'm going to recommend. I've spoken about these before, but to remind everybody, Nithing, Agonal Hymns. So this has got Matt Kilner, who has played in a lot of bands, Gorgasm, Vitriol. I think he's currently out on tour with Crown Magnetar, a deathcore band and stuff. But this is his one-man project, and it's alien sounding death metal in the best way. That's not to say it's totally out of this world, but it's got this like psychedelic quality about it that I haven't heard any brutal death metal band really do before. And he's done an amazing job on the production, and it's just it really is really refreshing to hear. So Nithing, Agonal Hymns. Another record that came out, it wasn't last year, it was the year before that. It wasn't any farther back than that, but there's a band called Theurgy. And this is somewhat of like a super group of a lot of members from bands in the New Standard Elite roster, which is an amazing label if you like this style. And they released a debut record called Emanations of Unconscious Luminescence. And this is very cool. If you look at the artwork, it's bright and colorful and purpley, and yeah, it kind of sounds that way. It's a very colorful sounding, but also ultra disgusting record at the same time, in the best ways. And then I'm going to go with Putridity. This is an Italian band, and this isn't for everybody. But this sounds like what getting rolled over by a tank and then just being blown apart with several machine guns would feel like. All their records are great, but my personal favorite is Ignominious I believe is how you pronounce it. And I think Willow Tip put that out. Willow Tip also do some really, really cool releases. Their roster kind of reminds me of stuff that you would typically expect, like a super underground iteration of Relapse Records to be putting out if they kind of focused on that stuff. So, they worked with Defeated Sanity, who we spoke about earlier, and a lot of really cool grindcore bands as well. So Willow Tip is another great label for everybody to kind of keep their eye on as well. So, those three bands, Nithing, Theurgy, Putridity, are definitely three death metal bands that are kind of newish and current that I'm hoping we hear more from as time goes on.
I love it. Check it all out. There's going to be a long list of links below this, but you will be available. If you haven't heard it, listen to it. I would love to hear what you guys out there, if you're listening to this, what your favorite death metal records are. Are we wrong? Probably. I don't know. You tell us. But David, thank you so much for joining us. I knew you'd come with a batch of knowledge and different records. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. More than happy for my autism to have a safe space here with the rest of you.
You could follow David at Atræ Bilis. As we mentioned, there's a new record coming out at some point. Follow him at Fulci Rots as well. He's going to be making some fucking amazing shirts filled with movies that are going to scar and change my brainwaves forever. I'm really excited to see what you got going on there. You can follow us at Riff Worship Pod, Instagram, Twitter. We got playlists below after you've finished all the records we've talked about today. But for myself, for Dylan, for David, for Swindle, wherever the hell he is in the world, we'll be back next week with something else. Bye.